Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
The Bible tells us there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. But what if those giants fled from before the face of Joshua the robber? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. There's an ancient pillar described by historians more than 2,000 years ago who claim that that is in fact the case, or that was the case anyway. And we're going to talk about the evidence for that around the Mediterranean and perhaps around the world with our guest who joins us on A View from the Bunker for the very first time. And I'm remiss for not having him here sooner. So I'm glad we can get him not only on the audio version, but if you're watching this on YouTube at youtube.com/Derek Gilbert, you get a chance to see him here on A View from the Bunker for the first time. He's the director and expedition leader for Gen 6 Productions. We'll also talk about a special expedition coming up this year, which Sharon and I are honored to be a part of, as we welcome for the first time Timothy Alberino to the program. Well, it's been a long time, and this is the first time we've had on the program, so welcome to A View from the Bunker.
Thank you. I'm finally here in the bunker.
Well, it seems like every time you come here, we get busy doing other things, and we don't have time during your visit. But here, you're spending a couple of days here in the Ozarks, so we got a chance to finally sit you down in the studio.
Here we are.
Yeah. Boy, we got a lot of stuff to cover here because you guys have had a busy 2017, what with the conference in, I guess let's start with that. I mean, you guys had the conference in Branson that you and Steve, Gen 6 Productions, put together this year with just an amazing lineup. And we're going to let you know with the graphic here where you can get the DVD set, because the DVDs of the presentations, the video recordings of the presentations, is that's just an incredible collection. It
was a phenomenal conference, and we got such positive feedback from that conference. People were telling us it was the best conference they've ever been to. The atmosphere was epic, and all the presenters did an amazing job, and everything was synchronized. All of the presentations were synchronized, unintentionally synchronized. Mm-hmm. And so I enjoyed it, and I know that the audience enjoyed it, and it was powerful. In fact, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, it was surprisingly anointed. Mm-hmm. I knew it was going to be good because of the quality of the speakers. I didn't realize how anointed it was going to be.
I come from a liturgical background where the word anointed never came up on a Sunday morning. That was not part of our tradition in the evangelical Lutheran church. But I know what you're saying, because I was honored to kick off the conference, and as I came up there, in front of this theater, every seat filled, 3,000 people. It was like something from outside was kind of guiding where I was going with the whole thing. I didn't really know how I was going to conclude the talk, and it came together, I thought, better than I could have hoped. So anointed is a good word for it, because I'm not giving myself a pat on the back for that. It was something that I hadn't expected or planned for that came together. We were out in the lobby during your talk, but I saw how emotional you got during your presentation. So, because that's the same way I got during my talk. You just get this feeling inside of you that is just, why am I even worthy to be here right now doing this?
The weight.
Yeah.
The weight of what we were saying, all of us together.
Right.
The weight of what we were presenting, the hour in which we were presenting it, mm-hmm. In terms of the time frame in which we now live. It all rested so heavily upon me when I was up there, and rested isn't even the right word. It was punching me in the gut, is what it felt like. Mm-hmm. Because I had obviously gone over my presentation many times, and this is the kind of stuff that I presented is within the themes that I often talk about, and never has, as I said, the weight, the ramification hit me in that way. And I attribute it to the fact that there's something very providential about that conference. Mm-hmm. and the audience was hungry, and there was a responsibility on our shoulders as speakers to give bread in due season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think we accomplished that, all of us together, because everything was so perfectly synchronized.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to be part of a gathering, and like I said the other day when we were just talking, Sharon and I got started on this journey back in 2000, I don't know, 3, 4. We started writing, and we're writing fiction and trying to find a way to market it using podcasting, which is, why we're doing this now. That started back in 2005 as we got a publisher. Yeah, you're going to have to market your stuff. Okay, what can we do? Well, podcasting had just become a thing. And so we were very early in that game. But what led us to that point was listening to Steve Quayle on his internet broadcast every night. And one of his favorite guests, of course, is Tom Horn.
The Q-Cast.
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry, not the Q. The Q-Files.
The Q-Files?
He's doing the Q-Cast now.
Right.
Which is a little video presentation. But back then it was the Q-Files.
And it was, on the, what was it? The radio network. I've still got old recordings somewhere on the hard drive here on one of my external drives somewhere. I've got old Steve Quayle radio broadcasts. But listening to Tom and Steve is what got us inspired to start doing research and to write and to start talking about this. And that led us to interview other people like, Stan Dale, L.A. Marzulli, and Dr. Michael Heiser and others, Guy Malone, Joe Jordan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that led us down this path to where, in the fall of 2017, I find myself on a conference stage, sharing the stage, and getting to moderate the discussion between you, Steve, and Tom, which was phenomenal too. It just an amazing journey that we've been led down. So let's talk about your journey. You're considerably younger than me. You're young enough to be, if I'd been a young dad, probably my son. So what is it that led you because it took me longer to find this road than it did you. So how did you get here so much quicker than me?
I dropped out of high school and moved to the Amazon jungle in a nutshell.
Kids, don't try this at home.
Is pretty much how it began for me. And there's a long story there, but I was quite dissatisfied as a young man, 17, 18, 19 years old, especially 17 and 18 years old. And I grew up in the church. I had a fantastic upbringing. My mom and dad were excellent parents. My mom died when I was 14, but they were excellent parents and very godly parents. And I grew up in a church environment. My dad was the pastor of a non-denominational church called New Testament Fellowship in the Cleveland, Ohio region, or in the Cleveland region of Ohio, I should say. And so I grew up in the church environment, and it was both beneficial and in some ways detrimental. Beneficial, obviously, because I had a wonderful upbringing and because I was always surrounded by mature believers, people who were in the faith, always in that environment of the scriptures and worship and that sort of thing. Very beneficial. Detrimental because, and this is the reason why I think a lot of preachers' kids, the PK kids, end up spiraling out of control and getting into all kinds of, they seem to be more extreme in their zeal for sin than your run-of-the-mill, non-believing secular person. And I think it's because there's which wasn't me, by the way. That wasn't my course at all. And I'm not patting myself on the back. It just wasn't. And I have a twin brother. Neither of us were given over to that sort of thing. But many of our friends who were also preachers' kids did end up going down the typical path. And part of it is because there tends to be, in the American church at least, and again, I've gleaned much benefit from growing up in this environment, but there tends to be you lose the substance of the gospel very quickly. And there's a lot of superficial, there's a lot of Sunday school superficiality that after a while begins to erode a person's connection with what we might call the organic truth of Scriptures, the organic presentation of the gospel as you find it in the Scriptures. And the church routine becomes, as I said, superficial. And what happens, you actually become disconnected to a degree, and you get caught up in a culture of churchianity as opposed to getting reinforced in the gospel and going deeper in the mysterious things of the gospel, which is what we are encouraged to do by Paul in the Scriptures, is to get beyond the milk, to have that stuff established in our lives, and then continue to mature in the things of God and the knowledge of God. And I'm not saying that to put churches down by any means, but for me, it was a frustration. I hated youth-oriented stuff when I was growing up, because I didn't want youth-oriented stuff. I wanted the meat of biblical truth. I didn't want to be fed a cool youth version of the truth. Yeah, I just wanted the raw truth.
A lot of youth group material, a lot of youth group activities are, to be quite honest, just intended to occupy the kids with something, just to take up their time with something, so that they're out of the parents' way while the parents are doing what they want to do in the church setting.
Exactly, and to a degree when I was growing up, but especially in a lot of churches now, youth-oriented programs, youth-oriented meetings are in some ways ridiculous. Because there's no reason why a child or a young person can't understand the truth of history, for example. And part of the reason is the truth of history is not hardly known, except for in these kind of circles, except for here with you guys, Skywatch, and in these kind of fringe, you might call fringe, Christian fringe circles, or at least is what people looking from the outside in might consider it. So, obviously, the theme relating to the Genesis 6 affair and everything that's encompassed in that was foreign to me and to most people when I was growing up in church. But now that I look back on it, I make sure I have 4 sons. Now that I look back on it, I want my sons to have that as the context for history. Not just some extra biblical or some fanciful thing that's interesting that maybe happens to be in the Bible. No, it is the context for history. And obviously, even beyond that, Adam and Eve and so forth, obviously is the context for human history, the basis of human history beginning with Adam and Eve. But very quickly on, you get the Watchers, and you get the giants, and you get that whole affair that led to the destruction of the old world. That's history. It's essential to have the proper biblical worldview, to have everything in context. You have to lay the right foundation from the beginning, and I never had that foundation.
Well, most of us in the church haven't.
But I was wired for it. I was wired to have that foundation. I grew up reading the Chronicles of Narnia. I grew up engrossed in those kind of stories. Something inside of me was prepared to receive that information that I never received. And I'm not putting that on anybody, because you can only teach what you know. And you're only responsible for what you know. And so I'm not blaming anybody, but the problem does. I will blame in a general sense the policy of most seminaries is to take the Sethite view of Genesis 6, which absolutely destroys the narrative of true history. And so because they take that Sethite view in the seminaries, the pastors know no other view. They're unaware that there are other contingencies possible for Genesis 6. And slowly, I think some of the seminaries are at least acknowledging that there's another view. And so what that did, and what it does, is it disarms a young person who might otherwise excel in the knowledge of the truth, and all truth, not just the knowledge of what we call the gospel, but what is called the gospel in scriptures, but also the truth of history, which is, as I said, essential for us to have a proper worldview. And so that was missing. One of the elements that was missing for me, and I was hungry. I was very hungry, and I was disillusioned with a lot of things. I hated high school, hated it. Got kicked out of high school, dropped / kicked out / dropped out of high school, and essentially moved to the Amazon jungle. And when I did that, this is a very long-winded answer. I apologize to your question. But when I did that, out on my own in a third world country, didn't speak the language, had to learn the language, didn't have any money, had to work for. Basically, I taught English for food. And I lived in the jungle for periods of time, in the jungle, like deep in the jungle, and I loved it. The lumberjacks, the hunters, and I learned a lot. It wasn't Sunday school in the jungle.
No, I can imagine not. It's one of those things where failure is not an option, so you're going to have to either suck it up, Buttercup, or you wind up back home in Cleveland, and then and then what? Back in the old routine?
Exactly. Yeah. So, in your faith, my faith in God was always very strong since I was a boy. And I attribute that primarily to the great upbringing I had. But when I went into the jungle and I severed myself from the world I knew and thrust myself into the unknown, I was forced to deal with everything that I had absorbed internally, all of my beliefs, everything. And rather than doing what so many people who have a very shallow foundation do and just sort of, none of this is worthwhile, I'm going to go pursue other things in life, which happens to a lot of atheistic people. They walk away bitter. After maybe having been a Christian or growing up a Christian, they walk away bitter thinking, what is this nonsense that I've been carrying around? Rather than that happening with me, my faith was cemented even deeper. I mean, and I experienced things that just absolutely, for the first time in my life, I can say, for the first time in my life, although I had been a believer all my life, for the first time in my life, I really, really, really began to understand the gospel. And it happened literally in the middle of the jungle.
It's almost a tale of like an Old Testament prophet type.
That's only the beginning of the story. Which I always allude to this mysterious thing because I can't get around it without at least alluding to it. There is a particular thing that happened to me in the jungle that was very life changing, and I'm not trying to tease people with this, but anyways, I had something occurred in my life that was pivotal, and it really launched me forward for the rest of my life.
Supernatural experience?
Yes. I had never, ever, ever taken any kind of drugs in my life. And again, I'm not patting myself on the back. If anything, I'm patting my parents on the back. I was too afraid of my dad to have taken. Yeah. And it wasn't that my dad never beat me or anything. I mean, I've gotten some hard whippings with the belt, but justly deserved. So, but I had a healthy, godly fear of my father, to where I wouldn't dream of doing something like taking drugs or going and getting drunk or sleeping around or something like that. For one, I never really wanted to, but even if I did, it was terrifying to think what would happen if my dad caught me.
The funny thing is, my dad is about 5'7", and I'm about 5'11" and a half. So I'm, 4.5, 5 inches taller than my dad. But in my mind's eye, I still am looking up to him. Now, he passed away in 2005, and it's kind of weird that is still the case. But also weird is that he gets smarter as he gets older, as I get older, even though he's been gone for 12 years. But no, it's strange, and I think that's the mark of a father who's done his job responsibly. Being a father, as you know now with 4 sons, means sometimes you have to do things that make your sons not very happy with you. Had to do that with our daughter. But in their mind's eye, as they grow, they're always going to be looking up at Dad.
Exactly. And there's a reverent fear, the kind of fear that we have for God, that as our fathers, as the authority, the godly authority.
Right.
That's what I hope to. I hope that my kids will. That I will be able to instill in them the same things that my dad, who's still alive, has instilled in me. And so, anyway, it was really all of this process of severing ties with American society and just sort of casting myself into the wind in the Amazon. And I ended up getting married. I ended up actually going back to Cleveland, and I did something that I literally swore I would never do, which was I swore I would never marry a woman from Cleveland, Ohio, especially a woman from my dad's church. Not because I had anything against the women from my dad's church, but I thought, it's a big ocean out there, and there's lots of fish in it. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason for me, if I'm going to choose a wife or be lucky enough to get a good wife, to pick from this little pond. That's always been my mentality. Mm-hmm. But instead, I got the most fantastic wife from Cleveland, Ohio, from my dad's church. So it's funny how those things work. But yeah, and I really did. I mean, I can't imagine any other woman tolerating me.
Yeah, I got the same kind of wife.
Yeah,
it is funny how things work out that way. And I was thankful that my father lived long enough to see Sharon and get to know her some. We married in 98. We're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary here in January.
How can you not love Sharon?
Well, yeah, it was my dad told me after he got to know her. It's like, hey, son, you married up. Just kind of.
I don't know how you did it, son.
Yeah, exactly. Just whatever you do, anything it takes. Hang on it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is kind of funny how things work out that way, and I'm sure your dad is as glad as my father was to see how things worked out. In fact, I was glad I was old enough and mature enough to recognize this aspect, and I asked him to be my best man at our wedding, and that was one of only 2 times in his life I saw him cry when he tried to give up. Tried to stand up and give that toast at the he couldn't finish. So that was kind of neat.
That's great.
Yeah. So how did you get? We'll skip ahead a little bit because I want to bring it more into present day. Well, no, I'm not either. I'm curious. What was this event in Peru that what did it take place in the jungle of Peru? What was this thing that transformed the direction of your life?
Unfortunately, I've decided not to divulge that yet, and I'm not trying to be mysterious. Okay. I'm not trying to self-aggrandize. I'm just not sure because it's such a personal thing that it's beneficial. That it would be beneficial to other people. I don't know. I mean, but suffice it to say, it was a very personal, powerful encounter with God, uninduced by any kind of narcotic or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And let's say this: I wanted to hear the voice of God. I wanted to have my burning bush experience. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have a burning bush experience.
That's a dangerous thing because God sometimes grants it, and it's
a dangerous thing. Yes, yeah. I wanted to. I was so hungry to encounter the tangible, and so that's what my purpose was, my main purpose, and that's why I spent so much time in the jungle and. A very fascinating story surrounding this whole thing, but believe me, it would take me 6 hours to unfold it. But let's just, as I said, suffice it to say, I did have the encounter with God that I was hoping for, but with a twist. So, but it propelled me forward into the reality of the world in which I live became exceedingly apparent, and I ended up getting married and going back to Peru with my wife and having 2 kids in Peru, two sons, mm-hmm. and we were engaged in missionary type work for a while in Peru, but also I started a business there, and so it was a mix of the two for some time, for 10 years. Actually, I lived in Peru for 10 years. My wife was there for 7 years. 2 of my sons are Peruvian citizens, Peruvian American citizens. And it was during that period of time that I began to come across, because I liked being with the native people, like being with the old timers, the hunters, the old fishermen, and so forth. and I would hear tales all the time, bizarre tales of cryptozoological things that lived in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And among these tales, many times, or at least a few times, were tribes of giants that still lived in the jungle. I was told this by several different people, but one particular story that stood out in my mind was it was an old hunter friend of mine who would walk for days into the jungle and go hunting by himself. And these guys are tough. I mean, they would just sleep with their gun against a tree. And if you've ever been in the Amazon, it's everything wants to eat you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the food chain, and you're not on the top when you're in there. And everything wants to eat you in the Amazon. And from the tiniest little things, to everything. You're just a piece of meat. But when he was out hunting on a particular trip by himself, he was way deep in the jungle, and he came across somehow in some context, I don't really remember, giants. Very furtive giants that were moving around in the jungle, and he realized there's a tribe of very exceptionally tall beings out here. And I remember him telling me that story, and the whole Genesis 6 thing wasn't really on my narrative. It had always been sort of in the back of my mind. I had read the Book of Enoch and so forth, but it wasn't really in focus yet. And after I started hearing these stories, I started to get real curious. Wait a minute, are there other stories like this? Is anybody publishing? So I went to the internet, to Google, and guess who I found?
Steve Quayle.
Steve Quayle. And Steve's stuff was, I just consumed it while I was in Peru. I was reading articles and stuff and by Steve, and then, or I should say, the books, the Genesis 6 Giants book, and that's how it began for me. This particular realm of information in terms of giants and really starting to do the research. And you know how it is. One thing leads to another.
Right.
Giants lead into other things very quickly.
Right.
And things I had been familiar with. The Genesis 6 affair, I was familiar with that back from, in high school. I went and bought a pseudepigrapha in Borders. Remember Borders?
Yeah.
Went there and bought one of those.
Back when they sold books in stores?
Yeah, exactly. I bought one of those big fat pseudepigrapha books and read the Book of Enoch and other books. And so I was very familiar with the whole idea of the Genesis 6 stuff, but never really laser focused on it until I came across Steve's work. And then, long story short, I ended up moving back to the States. Basically being forced to move back to the States. God, I hardly ever go willingly into anything. God has to open the door and then kick me through it, usually. So I'm busy usually banging on doors that are not open to me. And then the right one opens and I get kicked through it. So it's hardly ever a choice. It's hardly ever a situation in which Tim is making a wise choice. It's usually, all other options are just gone, and there's only one way to go. So that's usually the way it works for me. And so I ended up going back to the States and then living in Cleveland for a little while, opening up a communication with Steve. I speak Spanish. So Steve was actually in the process of wanting to get some things done in Spanish. One thing led to another. He realized that I was familiar with the content, and so I moved to Bozeman. And the rest is history.
No worries here. We're going to decline that call.
That's Steve calling you, I think.
Forgot to put the phone on Do Not Disturb while for the no worries.
But that's how I ended up working with Steve. It was just that. We were communicating, we were corresponding. I had asked him some questions and the Spanish thing, and then there's a lot more details. Like I told Josh this the other day on his program. I loaded up my truck with all my earthly goods. I didn't, which wasn't much. I could literally put them all inside of a car and on top of a car. It was quite a comical situation. It was like the Grinch that stole Christmas, the sled when he loads it up with all the...
yeah.
That's what my car looked like. And I almost died on the way driving out to Bozeman. I crashed on a bridge in an ice storm and almost came a foot from being T-boned by a semi-truck.
Wow.
I was looking at death. Not for the first time in my life, but I was staring death in the face. And it missed me by a foot. It literally missed me by a foot. And so that was on my way to Bozeman with all my possessions. So I won't bore you with the details, but I ended up getting there. Went back, and a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, gave me, had some standby flyer miles, not standby tickets, some flyer miles or something. I can't remember what the situation was, but I ended up flying with him and his wife to Bozeman. They sort of escorted us to Bozeman. It was rough getting there, but we got there.
Yeah.
And I've been working with Steve for about 4 years, which is great. Steve Quayle is awesome.
You know, it's funny because after listening to him for so many years on that radio program where he has a persona, I guess, or maybe it's just the content that he puts out there is oftentimes pretty dark. You can come away with the impression that he's kind of an angry guy who is. But when you get to know him behind the scenes, he's really funny.
Yes, you laugh a lot with Steve.
Yeah,
he's very lighthearted, which would surprise most people. We went to Peru. We did a trip to 2017. We went to Peru this year and to Cusco on an expedition and seminar we launched, and LA was there with us, and Steve was there. Me and Steve didn't know how it was going to go. I mean, we've got all these strangers who we're going to meet for the first time in a foreign country, in a third world country, and Steve had never been to Peru. And so I'm thinking, what have I done? On the way, what in the world was I thinking? But it ended up being amazing. It was just a wonderful time, and Steve had a great time, and I had a great time, and our wives, and Steve was very jovial, hilarious through the entire trip, and that is something that would surprise people, because Steve is very intense. Yes, and on the radio, but behind the scenes, he's still intense behind the scenes, but he's very lighthearted, and it has been an honor, a privilege, and an adventure working with Steve Quayle. Yeah, Steve's the real deal.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I have come to learn. I mean, there was a point going back 15 years now where listening to the program and after hearing, night after night of Steve as a watchman calling out the warning for various things that were coming our way, government intrusion into our lives, the spiritual decadence of the country in which we live, and things like that. Just thinking, oh my, come on, is he just trying to sell survival gear or precious metals? No, he really is genuinely concerned about the direction our country is going, the failure of the church, which should be on the front lines and saying, hey, people, wake up. We're coming to the conclusion that we're coming up to the end of the age, the end of the eon, that was prophesied 2,000 years ago. And nobody, very few in the church, let me say nobody, but very few in the church, and especially not in the mainline denominations, are saying anything about it. So you're right. He is the real deal. He's a genuine person, and somebody, like I said, when you get him off the, away from a microphone or a camera, he's just hysterical.
Yeah. He and Tom, both he and Tom, carry an urgency in their spirit about a lot of things, about the future, about what's unfolding in the earth. Both of them, kind of in different ways. Tom really has pursued the transhumanist type stuff and has led the charge on that, and then Steve, a lot of the political stuff and the weather wars and all that kind of stuff. But they both carry an analogous urgency I've picked up on both of these great men. And what's interesting is that what most people don't realize is that both Steve and Tom have very similar things happen to them. In Steve's case, he had a face-to-face encounter with Jesus when he was a heathen. And in Tom's case, he died.
Yeah, right.
But both of them were told the exact same thing from Jesus, from the Lord Jesus Christ, which was, I'm going to show you. He showed them both a panorama of things that were going to happen, and then he told them both, you're not going to remember.
You're not going to remember
until the
this.
time comes. And then I'm going to basically going to put the urgency in their spirit and recall in their memory what they had seen. Both Steve Quayle and Tom Horn, both of these men had this experience, not together, separately in their own lives. Tom died, and Steve, when he was thoroughly converted, when he saw Jesus and fell dead at his feet, like dead, not fell dead, but fell as dead at his feet, as the Bible says. And most people don't realize that. I find that fascinating.
That is.
Because these two guys, more than anybody else, have really been on the forefront and the front lines of getting people prepared for what's coming.
Right.
In two different, in the realms of their operation have been different. Mm-hmm. But they're both, and it's interesting now that we're all converging. And not only are they converging, you and I are converging, and
we're bringing
Gen
in other
6 and
you got
Skywatch.
Josh Peck,
exactly.
and now we got Justin Fall and Wes Fall. The Fall brothers are joining in as part of this ministry. What Sharon has been doing, and the contributions that she's making from her background.
Yep.
I mean, there's a long time when she went back to school as an adult student, and had to borrow a lot of money in order to get that biology degree. We're probably going to be paying on that until she dies, until Jesus comes
that was
first.
An expensive title in front of her name there.
It was, but it was for his purposes, because right now she's putting it to work for the kingdom.
It gives her credibility that she otherwise would
not have. Right.
That's right.
So that is,
and we need people like that.
And it's all come together for those reasons. I mean, my background in a secular broadcasting career, promoting a lifestyle that
you were born with the voice.
Well, and the face too, for radio. But it's all part of a plan that is coming together. It's like that movie Signs, the Mel Gibson movie, where you realize at the end
of the movie everything starts to fall into place.
Exactly, and you realize that none of it was an accident. His brother's failed baseball career, the daughter's phobia, water
all
phobia,
the water glasses all over the house.
Right,
precisely.
It all fit together perfectly. Well, you talked about the expedition to Peru, and by the way, was really, really happy to see that Steve and L.A. Marzulli had come together on that, because I know that there was some tension between them for a while, and nobody seems to remember what that was all about.
Yeah.
But so I was really, really happy to see that.
We're good friends. Steve and L.A. are good friends, and me and L.A. are good friends.
Yep.
And we're all fighting the same battle.
Right.
We need allies and we need friends, and
not competition.
So it was great. That was the first time Steve had ever met L.A. Marzulli, or that I had ever met L.A. Marzulli, and how interesting that the first time we meet is in Lima, Peru. And the very first conversation I had with L.A., I was in a hotel waiting for him, and I was waiting for the whole group, or receiving the group. Mm-hmm. I was in Lima, Peru with my wife and my production assistant, his wife, who's Peruvian. And L.A. was there. He was already there, but he came to the hotel. And so I went downstairs to have dinner with him, to meet him for the first time. And I go downstairs, and 3 hours later, we just had finished an extremely engrossing, powerful conversation. Mm-hmm. So we're all peas in the same pod, basically. When you boil it down, we're all driven by the same stuff, informed with the same information, basically, and we're allies. And there aren't many of us, so we got to stick together.
Right. And
Musketeers.
Got to give him credit too, because it was his novel called Nephilim. When I first heard about the Genesis 6 paradigm, and I was 35 years old, this was in a little independent Baptist church in St. Louis that Sharon and I had gone to visit and became members of for a while. They had an evangelist come in who talked about the sons of God, the daughters of men, and talking about the literal giants, the Nephilim, and the wickedness, and the Watchers, and Mount Hermon. And I was like, what? Sharon had been hearing about that at her church that she grew up in back in little DuPont, Indiana. I'd never heard about it. So I went to the local county library branch there in St. Louis, and the only book that they had that dealt with the Nephilim was the novel Nephilim by Lynn Marzulli. And so that was my first exposure to the concept outside of Genesis 6.
Yeah.
So, between him and Chuck Missler's book, Alien, Alien Encounters or
something like that. Yeah.
Anyway, that was really what kind of led me down this whole path. So, anyway, talking about expeditions, we're going to tell you about an expedition here. I'm going to actually play the trailer that you recorded this past week, and we'll put this here in the middle of the film. So we'll be right back after you watch this.
I'm Timothy Alberino, the director of Gen 6 Productions, and I'm excited to announce that we will be launching another True Legends Expedition and Seminar in May of 2018. This time, we are heading into the heart of the unholy sea and the cover-up of giants worldwide, to Rome and the island of Sardinia. As I've said many times before, Sardinia is one of the most enigmatic places I have ever visited. The island was once home to a mysterious megalith-building people known as the Nuragic civilization, who we believe were the descendants of the Canaanite giants that fled from the face of Joshua when the Hebrews conquered the Promised Land. There were once over 30,000 stone towers on the island and thousands of megalithic tombs known to this day as the tombs of the giants. While in Sardinia, our team will be exploring these towers and tombs, as well as meeting with some of the local inhabitants who have dug up the bones of giants with their own hands. In Rome, we will be touring the Vatican, as well as other iconic locations, and hosting a seminar focusing on the confiscation and control of artifacts pertaining to giants and the pre-flood age. Both Steve Quayle and I will be attending the expedition, as well as our good friends and special guests from Skywatch TV, Derek and Sharon Gilbert. Derek has done some exceptional scholarly work regarding ancient Near East cosmology, especially as it relates to the Watchers, giants, and the cultural implications of the Genesis 6 affair. Our investigations in Sardinia have dovetailed with Derek's own discoveries concerning the necromancy of the Canaanites and the raising of the Rephaim. We are looking forward to sharing with our guests in Sardinia what we have inadvertently uncovered together. The trip will be taking place from the 20th through the 27th of May in 2018 and is limited to 30 guests. The cost to attend is $79.95, not including airfare. A 50% down payment is required to complete registration. This is a 5-star expedition, so our lodging and dining accommodations will be first class. We had a fantastic time on the last True Legends expedition and seminar we hosted in Cusco, Peru. In fact, many of our guests enjoyed the trip so much that they have decided to accompany us again in Rome and Sardinia. Attending these expeditions is a great way to support Gen 6 Productions and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet like-minded people while exploring some of the most fascinating places on Earth with the Gen 6 team. If you would like to register for the True Legends Expedition and Seminar in Rome and Sardinia, or for more information, visit TrueLegendsTheSeries.com.
So, May of this year.
We're going to Rome.
This is going to be an incredible trip.
It will be. Yeah, no, we're really excited that you and Sharon are able to come. I didn't know if you were going to be able to make it happen because, of course, you're going to be in Israel.
Yeah,
it ended up working out perfectly.
Well, yeah, May is going to be a really exciting month for us because we've got, of course, the trip to Israel and also Jordan. We're going to see Petra as part of that. This is through Avi Lipkin, or rather Aaron Lipkin's company in it's not in Jerusalem. He actually lives in the West Bank.
Does he?
Yeah, one of the new settlements there in the West Bank. But Aaron Lipkin's Lipkin Tours company, lipkintours.com, if you want to check out their company. Leading a tour over there, and we're going to see, Mount Hermon. We're going to see the archaeological sites at Dan, Qumran. Of course, we'll be in Jerusalem on the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence. So, I mean, how cool is that? And then
you better know where the bomb shelters are.
Well, we figure if you're going to go from Jerusalem,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
You couldn't ask for better than that. But we're praying that everything is going to be safe. So that tour filled up. And then on our way home from the Oklahoma City conference, you called us. We were literally on the road on a 2-lane highway in the back roads of Oklahoma, and you called to offer us this opportunity. It's like, I think that date's going to work, but wait until we can stop the car and check the calendar. So yeah,
or send a pigeon out.
That's it. So because there are still a few slots left as of this recording on Thursday of this week, Thursday, November 30th. What does the tour involve for people who might want to grab one of those few remaining slots?
We're doing these every year now. We're calling them the True Legends Expedition and Seminar. Basically, what we do is we retrace our steps in the film, and we go to the places that we feature in the True Legends documentary film series. We went to Peru last time, and it was such a great trip. We said we got to do another one. So the most logical location to visit next would be Rome and Sardinia, which were featured in Rome in the Unholy See and Sardinia in the Holocaust of Giants. And because Sardinia is a province of Italy, it made sense to do them both together. So this trip is, first of all, it's a 5-star trip. And the price reflects the fact that this is not a high school field trip. This is a 5-star expedition and what that means is simply this: our lodging and our dining will be first class, and that's the way we do it. That's the way we've chosen to do it, and our guests really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. The ones that can go, and this is a great way to support Gen 6 Productions. We don't make a lot of money running these trips, but it helps us buy equipment, do stuff like that, and we love meeting the people. We make great connections with people and friendships, mm-hmm. and so it's a 5-star trip, first class trip, and we go to the most important locations in the context of our films. So in Rome, we will be touring the Vatican.
Very cool.
And some other places, probably the Pantheon, mm-hmm. some other locations, and then and of course we're going to be doing a seminar, and then in Sardinia we'll be touring what are called the nuraghi, mm-hmm. the megalithic towers and the megalithic tombs, the tombs of the giants, and we'll also be speaking with some of the resident Sardinians who've been involved in the whole Sardinia Gate situation, the mm-hmm. cover-up of giants. Luigi Muscas will be with us. He was featured in our film. So it's going to be a great time. Of course, we're going to do a seminar in Sardinia as well. Part of the seminar is going to take place in Sardinia, where you're going to present some of the very interesting correlations that we've discovered.
Yeah. There's some really interesting overlap between the research that you did on Sardinia and what I stumbled into with just the archaeological finds of the Canaanite or Amorite rituals and religious practices.
The necromancy, the raising of the Rephaim, and the raising of the Rephaim, that whole idea, I believe, is the reason why mm-hmm. there were over 30,000 megalithic towers built mm-hmm. on the island of Sardinia, and thousands, possibly tens of thousands of megalithic tombs.
Yeah,
I think it was literally it was literally constructed. All of these towers and tombs were constructed to facilitate the necromantic practice mm-hmm. of the Canaanite mystics or the Canaanite priests of communication with the dead Rephaim mm-hmm. and the cult of giants.
Yeah,
and of course we're talking about the Phoenicians. We're talking about the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, at least the Canaanitish peoples. Mm-hmm. Could have been different tribes that came from this populace of people that were generally referred to as the Canaanites. But you're talking about the Amorites, you're talking about the Anakim, you're talking about the Zamzumim and the other tribes that were in the Promised Land.
The thing that blew me away, and this is where I've been doing some study on just the cosmology of the ancient Greeks, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, and elsewhere around, the Carthaginians, who were descendants. Basically, it was a colony from Tyre, the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were just the descendants of the Canaanites, and the Canaanites is just a geographic designation. Mm-hmm. It's simpler than to say Western Amorites, which is what they were.
Right.
But the Amorites were also the founders of Babylon, which, of course, is the symbol of end times spiritual wickedness that John the Revelator wrote about. But he specifically echoed Ezekiel 27. If you look at the description by Ezekiel of the destruction of Tyre, the Phoenicians, mm-hmm. and the destruction of Mystery Babylon the Great, there's no question that they were referring to the same thing. And yes. I think it all goes back to this particular culture, those rituals to summon the Rephaim that have been discovered at the ancient Amorite Canaanite kingdom of Ugarit, which dates to about the time of the Judges. One of those rituals where they specifically referred to the Rephaim and referred to them in the context of calling them travelers or those who cross over, which is another phrase that's used by Ezekiel in Ezekiel 39. The Valley of the Travelers is where the hordes of Magog will be slaughtered, referring to the area of Jordan and the Golan Heights, where they found thousands of these megalithic dolmens, burial dolmens. Okay, it's where the Zamzumim and the mm-hmm. Amim and the Horim, those tribes of Anakim were living along the east side of the Jordan River. This ritual says that El, who was the chief Canaanite god, equated by scholars with Baal-Hamon, with Saturn, with Kronos, the leader of the Titans, the gods who were punished by being sent to Tartarus, the Watchers, in other mm-hmm. words. El summons the Rephaim to a ritual dinner in his sanctuary. His sanctuary is Mount Hermon. All right? The The Rephaim, they mount their horses, they hitch up their chariots. This ritual literally says they travel one day and then another, and at dawn of the third day, they arrive. Think about what happened the dawn of the third day after Jesus had a ritual meal. Yeah, Mary and Mary Magdalene arrive at the tomb to find it empty. God once again turning a ritual of the pagan world on its head.
That's true. I never thought of it that way. Very powerful.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I hadn't even found that when I did the presentation in Branson. This was something that came after that. I was able to take that to Oklahoma City, and I could see enough light in the crowd to see jaws drop when I brought that out. But now, am I saying for sure that that's why Jesus was in the tomb until the third? I don't know, but it sure is coincidental otherwise, and I'm not much of a coincidence theorist. So
no, that's very powerful. He made a show of them.
Yes.
And the cross and the resurrection.
And think about it, because we serve a God who knows the end from the beginning. He knew from the beginning of time that they would be doing this, and he allowed it.
Yep.
And then,
Yep. Yeah, and that's why I was saying earlier that unless you have the proper context of history, you miss all of this, and you're left with a very superficial form of churchianity without the substance.
Yeah.
And without all of this amazing history, biblical history. Biblical history is just another way of saying the truth of history.
Yes, exactly.
And it's just a wealth of knowledge that informs your modern view of what's going on in the world in a geopolitical sense, but then also transhumanism. Also, because this is just the transhumanist theme is essentially it's old magic. It's the old promise of apotheosis that was promised to Eve and Adam from the serpent. You shall be like the gods.
Right.
And that is the promise, the empty promise of eternal life, and of the knowledge of the gods. It's a Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
It's precisely that. It is a Faustian bargain. Transhumanism is a Faustian bargain that we will give up our humanity in order to attain a godlike existence, immortality.
Yeah.
And it's exceedingly dangerous. And it's old. It's not new. It's old.
No. In fact, Sharon and I are going to be talking at Morningside, Jim Baker's church, this coming week on Wednesday night. By the way, if you want to watch that, you can see it live streamed at ptlnetwork.com, Wednesday, December 3rd. I believe that's the Wednesday. And no, that's not December 3rd. It's December 5th. Anyway, the next Wednesday night, the first Wednesday in December, you can see that 7 p.m. Central Time. That's UTC -6. The presentation we're going to give is called "The Oldest Lie in the Book." Ye shall be as gods, or hashtag Ye shall be as gods.
Hashtag Ye shall.
Yeah. So because that's exactly right. It's the same old lie, but the enemy keeps bringing it out because we humans keep falling for it. So. Where do people go for information if they, again, only 30 people on this tour and only a few slots left.
It costs, it's $79.95, not including airfare. But again, it is a 5-star luxury trip, first-class trip. And people can go to TrueLegendsTheSeries.com to register. And there is a 50% down payment required to secure registration. And it is filling up. I mean, it's almost full.
Yeah.
So we have a few more spots left. So people want to join us. They need to go do it right away. They need to go register right away. It will be an amazing experience. We get just absolutely, we get very high quality people that are hungry for the truth, that are ready to learn. Just very good-mannered people that are courteous. That was our experience last time. And I'm happy to say that over half, or at least half of the people that accompanied us to Peru liked it so much, they immediately signed up.
Wow.
To go to Rome and Sardinia.
Very
so
cool.
That in itself is a testimony.
Yeah.
That these trips are really nice, and they're fun, and they're educational, they're informative. And I was really happy when I saw that was the case. Because we get great people. We get great people at our conference. We get great people on these expeditions. And we're really looking forward to the group we're going to have in Rome and Sardinia, especially since you and Sharon will be joining us.
We are honored to be a part of it.
And by the way, Steve Quayle will be going also.
Yeah.
Steve will be there. I'll be there. Derek and Sharon Gilbert and 30 guests.
Yeah. We're really
and the Gen
looking
6
forward to it.
team. We'll have some of our crew with us.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to getting the opportunity to see some of these archaeological sites firsthand and come back with some video. And, of course, we'll be sharing that with you as the tour progresses, filing reports for Skywatch TV from the road for those 3 weeks in Israel and then Rome and Sardinia. And looking forward to 2018 being a transformational year in a number of ways.
Live from the Rephaim incubation chamber in the tomb.
That's it.
This is Derek Gilbert communicating with the Rephaim.
Yeah. Well, Tim, glad you're here, and we look forward
Pleasure.
to it. Like I said, 2018 is going to be a phenomenal year.
I'm happy that I finally got the chance to talk to you in the bunker.
TrueLegendsTheSeries.com is the website. You can get information about the tour of Rome and Sardinia there. The True Legends expedition to Rome and Sardinia featuring Steve Quayle, Timothy Alberino, Sharon, and me. And as Tim said, they've only got space for 30 guests, and most of those slots are already filled. So if you're interested in attending, being a part of this trip, then do act quickly because it won't the available slots won't last much longer. TrueLegendsTheSeries.com. We've also got some programming coming up with Tim on Skywatch TV in January. You'll want to watch for that because there's an exciting announcement coming about another event in 2018 that you will definitely want to take advantage of. Now, coming up on December the 6th, during the discussion with Tim, I said the 5th. It's the 6th. Sharon and I will be at Morningside in Blue Eye, Missouri. That is the church of Jim and Lori Baker. We will be speaking there on the evening of Wednesday the 6th. That's evening local time, of course. They do stream it live to the internet at ptlnetwork.com. That's ptlnetwork.com. 7 p.m. local time. That's Central Time in the U.S., which is UTC-6. So 7 p.m. UTC-6 on the evening of Wednesday, December 6th. Sharon and I will be talking. They begin the service with about a half an hour of music, and then we will talk beginning at about 7:30. So, and we'll talk for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Once we get started, we lose track of time. So hopefully you can check that out. That will also be archived at the website, ptlnetwork.com. And then on Thursday, December 7th, Tom Horn joins Sharon and me at Morningside for a recording of programs for the Jim Baker Show. And we'll be talking about transhumanism, but we'll also be talking about the new book by Josh Peck and me, The Day the Earth Stands Still, Unmasking the Old Gods Behind UFOs, ETs, and the Official Disclosure Movement. So, interesting discussion that day. They do stream those recordings live to the web through ptlnetwork.com again, but those will be part of the Jim Baker Show, and so you'll be seeing those clips on, if you get Jim Baker locally, or you can find those. We'll be linking to the YouTube videos that they post as well in the weeks that follow. So based on the turnaround time, those programs will probably air sometime around Christmas. So, also need to mention, speaking of The Day the Earth Stands Still, Josh Peck and I will be on Coast to Coast AM this weekend. In fact, by the time you're listening to this on Sunday evening, it's going to be just hours away. Beginning at midnight Central Time on midnight December 3rd into Monday December 4th, Josh Peck and I will be guests of George Norrie's, or whoever's hosting Coast to Coast AM that night, Coast to Coast AM for 2 hours, midnight to 2 a.m. Central Time, that's UTC-6, to talk about the day the Earth stands still. And we just pray for your prayers to guide our thoughts and words so that we can convey our message effectively. We don't want to alienate the true believers in the UFO community. We want to encourage them to consider our point of view, which is that the ancient aliens theory is really rooted in the occult, first of all. We'll present the evidence for that, and that the abduction phenomenon is real, but it is not what true believers think it is. So that, again, coming up, Coast to Coast AM, midnight to 2 a.m., the very early morning of Monday, December 4th, Josh Peck and I, the hosts, or the guests, rather, on Coast to Coast AM. I want to also tell you about an event, a film that we had the chance to screen here at Skywatch TV early. It will debut on January 11th of 2018. The film is Alien Intrusion. This is based on the book by Gary Bates, the CEO of Creation Ministries International. Alien Intrusion features a number of guests in the film, this documentary, which is narrated by John Schneider, the actor John Schneider, features people who are included in the interviews, the interview DVDs that we include as part of the package with The Day the Earth Stands Still. Joe Jordan, Joyce Ahrens, Guy Malone are featured in this film, Alien Intrusion. It basically begins by debunking the scientific explanation for the UFO phenomenon. Basically says there's no way scientifically for craft to cross the vast distances that separate the stars. So if they're not coming from another star, where are these things coming from? And then it gets into the spiritual, i.e. the biblical answer for the UFO phenomenon and the abduction phenomenon. So we recommend the movie highly. Look for it at a theater near you Thursday, January 11th. It'll be in 700 theaters around the country. I know here in our area, theaters in Springfield, Missouri and Joplin, Missouri will be featuring the film, or showing the film. But you can find out more at the website for the film, alienintrusion.com. And again, highly recommended by us here at Skywatch TV. DVDs for the 2017 Branson True Legends Conference, now available. You can find those at truelegendstheseries.com, truelegendstheseries.com. You can also get the DVD set from the Blessed Hope Prophecy Forum, at which Sharon and I were honored to speak. Those DVD sets will be shipping in January. You'll find information at prophecywatchers.com about the DVD sets. I'm sure we'll have them at the Skywatch TV store as well. In fact, we'll also have the DVDs for the True Legends Conference at the Skywatch TV store. So you can keep an eye out for them. And speaking of conferences, we're already lining up conferences for 2018. Hear the Watchman returns to Dallas, March 22nd through the 25th of 2018 at the Hilton DFW Lakes Hotel and Executive Conference Center. That's in Grapevine, Texas, actually. Henry Groover has just been added to the list of speakers, along with Bill Salas, prophecy expert, Carl Gallups, Paul Begley, Dr. Michael Lake, Josh Peck, Pastor Casper McLeod, Don and Mary Colbert, L.A. Marzulli, and, of course, Josh Peck, Sharon, and myself. You can find out more about that at hearthewatchmen.com, and we sure hope you can make it to that. Again, my new book, The Day the Earth Stands Still, co-authored with Josh Peck. We've got a great package at Skywatch TV for the book. Tom Horn with another one of his crazy deals. It's offered as part of a package that includes the 2 novels by Mike Heiser dealing with the UFO phenomenon, The Facade and The Portent. Josh Peck's new book, Unraveling the Multiverse, which is basically an updated and combined edition of his 2 previous books, Quantum Creation and Cherubim Chariots. And then the exclusive video interviews that have never been broadcast before, featuring Gary Stearman, Chuck Missler, Joe Jordan, Paul McGuire, Mike Heiser, Guy Malone, Russ Dizdar, Stan Deo, Joyce Ahrens, Chris Putnam, the late Chris Putnam, Daryl Sims, the Alien Hunter, and L.A. Marzulli. Plus, The Secret Vatican and Alien Antichrist Connection, a collection with Tom Horn. All of that together for $40. You'll find that only at skywatchtvstore.com, skywatchtvstore.com. Please join our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. You'll find that online at gilberthouse.org, gilberthouse.org. Free archives going all the way back to Genesis 1:1. And we've got a new mobile app for the fellowship. All of the archives available in your hand or your tablet. You'll find it for Android and for iOS. We've got links to those at gilberthouse.org as well. Please give us a review here. View from the Bunker, or wherever you find us, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever fine podcasts are sold. And you'll find that our website, you'll find links at our website to the social media sites as well for VFTB, including the View from the Bunker page at Facebook, where we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a like. View from the Bunker, production of Gilbert House, and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod. His website is incompetech.com. Our announcer is DC Good. Please remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.